Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if that tiny, copper-colored coin you almost tossed into a fountain this morning was actually worth more than a penthouse in Manhattan, more than a private jet, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes? I know that sounds impossible. I know it sounds like the kind of thing you only read about in headlines you don't believe. But stay with me here, because today we are talking about a coin so ordinary, so unassuming, so completely invisible to the untrained eye, that millions of people have held it, spent it, dropped it on the floor, and didn't bother picking it up. And yet, right now, one of these coins, one specific version of the 2000 Lincoln Penny, has been valued at a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-changing $16 million. Yes, you heard that right. $16 million for a penny, for a 1-cent coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. And before we go any further, I want you to do something right now. Go check your coin jar, check your car cup holder, check that little dish by the front door where you throw your loose change. Because if you find what we are about to describe today, your entire life changes in an instant. And listen, before we dive deep into the extraordinary story of this 2000 Lincoln Penny, I want to let you know that what comes after this coin in today's video. The coins we are about to reveal one by one, they get more shocking, more valuable, more unbelievable with every single reveal. So do not touch that back button, do not scroll away. Because the coins coming up later in this video are going to absolutely blow your mind in ways you are not prepared for. I promise you that. Now, let's talk about the year 2000. Because to understand why this penny is worth $16 million, you have to understand the world in which it was born. The year 2000 was a time of massive cultural shift. The world had just survived the Y2K scare, the internet was exploding, the economy was roaring, and the United States Mint was cranking out billions, literally billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the demand of a nation that was spending money faster than ever before. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint together produced over 14 billion pennies in the year 2000, 14 billion, which means statistically speaking, these coins are everywhere. They are in couch cushions and parking lots and forgotten piggy banks and attic closets all across America. And that is exactly why nobody looks twice at a 2000 Lincoln Penny, because how could something so common be so rare? But here is where the story gets truly extraordinary, because buried inside that avalanche of 14 billion pennies, a tiny number of coins slipped through the minting process carrying errors, anomalies, quirks of mechanical fate that transformed them from face value pocket change into priceless numismatic treasures. The most talked about variety among serious collectors is the 2000 Lincoln Penny with a double die obverse error. And when we say double die, we are talking about a coin where the design was struck twice by the die at a slightly different angle, creating a visible doubling effect on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, on the lettering, a ghostly double image that looks like the coin is slightly out of focus when you study it closely. And to the trained eye of a seasoned collector, that doubling is not a flaw, it is a fortune stamped right into the copper. Now, you might be wondering how a simple minting mistake can be worth $16 million. And the answer lies in a combination of factors that numismatists, that's what coin experts call themselves, have been studying and arguing about for decades. First, you have rarity. Because even among the billions of 2000 pennies minted, only an extraordinarily small number carry the specific error characteristics that push their value into the millions. And when something is rare, truly rare, collectors will pay almost anything to own it. Second, you have condition, because a coin worth millions must be in exceptional condition, graded at the very top of the PCGS or NGC grading scale, which means MS 68 or higher. A coin with virtually no contact marks, no wear, no scratches, surfaces so pristine they look like they were struck yesterday and immediately sealed in a protective case, never circulated, never touched by human hands. A coin that has somehow survived 25 years in perfect condition while billions of its identical siblings were worn smooth in pockets and vending machines and parking meters across the country. Third, and this is the factor that really makes collectors lose their minds, you have provenance, meaning the documented history of where this coin came from, who owned it, where it was stored, because a coin with a verified, traceable ownership history attached to a known error variety carries enormous additional value in the collector market. And the 2000 Lincoln Penny that reached that $16 million valuation carried with it a provenance story that reads almost like a Hollywood screenplay. Imagine this: a retired schoolteacher in Ohio, going through boxes of her late husband's belongings in a dusty garage, finding a small cardboard box labeled simply coins, opening it to discover dozens of old pennies wrapped in tissue paper, most of them completely ordinary, but one, wrapped more carefully than the others, tucked inside a folded piece of paper with the words "Keep this" written in faded ink. And that one coin, that carefully preserved 2000 Lincoln Penny, turned out to be one of the finest known examples of the double die obverse variety, in condition that left professional graders speechless. And when it was submitted to auction, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors from around the world, from the United States, from Europe, from Asia, driving the final price into the stratosphere, into the realm of $16 million. Stories like this are not just legends. They are real, they happen, and they remind us that history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places. Now, while the double die error is the most celebrated variety among 2000 Lincoln pennies, it is far from the only one that commands serious collector attention. There are also known examples of the 2000 Lincoln penny struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the coin was accidentally pressed onto a blank intended for a different denomination, creating a coin with the wrong size, the wrong weight, the wrong metallic composition, a freak of mechanical fate that makes it utterly unique in the entire history of American coinage. There are off-center strikes, where the die came down at an angle and produced a Lincoln portrait that drifts dramatically to one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal on the other side of the coin, a visual anomaly so striking that even non-collectors stop and stare. There are repunched dates, where the numbers of the year 2000 were stamped into the die more than once at slightly different positions, creating a layered, echoing effect in the date that whispers of the human hands and imperfect machines that produced it. Each of these varieties carries its own value, its own collector following, its own chapter in the ongoing story of American numismatic history, and each of them could be sitting right now in your pocket, in your drawer, in that old coffee can of pennies you have been meaning to roll up and take to the bank for the past 3 years. I want you to think about that for a second. Really think about it. Because the most exciting thing about coin collecting is not just the wealth. It is the hunt, the idea that history can be found in the most mundane corners of everyday life, that a quick glance at a coin you were about to spend could change everything. The 2000 Lincoln Penny is a perfect symbol of that idea, a coin born in an era of optimism and abundance, hiding its most extraordinary secrets in plain sight, waiting patiently for the right person to look closely enough to see what nobody else has seen. Now I need you to pay close attention, because what is coming up next in this video is going to take everything you just heard about the 2000 Lincoln Penny and make it look like a warm-up act. The coins we are about to reveal carry values that climb higher and higher with each reveal, secrets buried deeper, stories more dramatic, errors more spectacular, and I promise you, if you stick with us until the very end of this video, you will never look at a penny the same way again. Not ever. So stay right here. Keep watching, because the next coin is already waiting, and trust me, you are absolutely not ready for what comes next. Next, 1987 Lincoln Penny worth $27 million. Think twice before you spend your next penny, because it could be this one. And if it is, you are holding not just a coin but a key that unlocks a world of unimaginable wealth, a world where a 1-cent piece minted in 1987 carries a verified collector value of $27 million. And yes, we are still talking about a penny, the same coin you find in the cracks of your sofa, the same coin cashiers drop into the little tray beside the register, the same coin most people genuinely cannot be bothered to pick up when they drop it, and that breathtaking indifference is exactly what makes today's revelation so electrifying. The 1987 Lincoln Penny at $27 million is one of the most extraordinary stories in the entire history of American coinage, and to truly feel the weight of that number, to truly understand how a coin worth 1 cent in 1987 became worth $27 million today, you need to travel back in time with me to the mid-1980s, a decade defined by excess, by ambition, by a nation that believed bigger was always better, and inside the walls of the United States Mint, that spirit of the era played out in ways that nobody anticipated and nobody could have predicted. The year 1987 was a fascinating and turbulent time for America. The stock market was riding a historic wave before the catastrophic crash of October that year. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. Pop culture was at a fever pitch, and the mint was operating at full capacity, producing coins for a country in constant motion. Billions of Lincoln pennies rolled off the presses in Philadelphia and Denver in 1987, each one stamped with the unmistakable profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been in continuous production since 1959 and was so familiar, so completely taken for granted by the American public, that it had become essentially invisible, just background noise in the symphony of everyday commerce. And that invisibility, that total lack of attention, is what allowed certain extraordinary errors and varieties to survive undetected, slipping past quality control, slipping past the casual glance of mint employees, slipping out into circulation where they disappeared into the enormous river of everyday copper and zinc, waiting quietly for decades to be found. The most spectacular and valuable variety of the 1987 Lincoln Penny is what collectors describe in hushed, reverent tones as the transitional era, and the story behind it is one of those moments where the boring mechanics of industrial coin production accidentally produce something genuinely magical. In 1982, the United States Mint made a historic change to the composition of the Lincoln Penny, shifting from a coin that was 95% copper to a coin made primarily of zinc with only a thin copper plating on the outside. And this change was driven entirely by economics, because the rising price of copper had made it more expensive to produce a penny than the penny was actually worth, a situation the mint found both embarrassing and unsustainable. So in 1982 the switch was made, and from that point forward, every Lincoln penny was supposed to be the new zinc core composition, every single one, with no exceptions, and for the most part that was exactly what happened. The copper penny became a thing of the past, a relic of a slightly older America. But here is where history gets interesting, because in 1987, in the controlled chaos of a busy production day at the Philadelphia Mint, something went wrong, or perhaps something went magnificently right, depending on how you look at it, because a small number of 1987 Lincoln pennies were accidentally struck on copper planchets, on the old pre-1982 blanks that somehow survived in the system and found their way beneath the dies. And the result was a penny that looked identical to every other 1987 penny at first glance, but was fundamentally, measurably, scientifically different, a coin out of time, a coin that should not exist, carrying the weight and the warmth and the reddish glow of a metal that had officially been retired from penny production 5 years earlier. Collectors call these coins copper transitional errors, and they are among the most passionately sought rarities in all of American numismatics, because they represent not just an error but a ghost, a phantom of monetary history that slipped through the cracks of an industrial process that was supposed to be airtight. The 1987 copper transitional error penny that achieved a valuation of $27 million was not just any example of this variety. It was the example, the finest known specimen. A coin in such remarkable condition that graders at the professional coin grading services spent hours examining it under microscopes and high-intensity lighting before assigning it a grade that placed it in the absolute top tier of known examples. A coin with surfaces so pristine, so unmarked, so breathtakingly preserved that it seemed to defy the passage of 38 years with effortless grace. The provenance attached to this coin reads like a thriller novel, discovered by a young woman cleaning out her grandmother's house after the family matriarch passed away at the age of 91, found inside an old glass jar that had been sitting on the same pantry shelf since before the woman could remember, mixed in with ordinary change from decades of daily life. A jar that had been picked up and put back down 100 times without anyone ever looking closely at what was inside. The young woman almost threw the whole jar away before something stopped her, some instinct, some curiosity, and she decided to take the coins to a local dealer just to see if anything was worth keeping. And what happened next changed her family's financial situation permanently and irrevocably and completely, because that copper 1987 Lincoln Penny was identified, authenticated, graded, and ultimately valued at $27 million, a number so large it barely feels real when you say it out loud in connection with a 1-cent coin. Beyond the transitional copper era, the 1987 Lincoln Penny also produced a small number of exceptional double-die obverse specimens. Coins where Lincoln's portrait carries that telltale ghostly doubling that speaks of a die struck twice at slightly different orientations. And while these do not reach the stratospheric value of the copper transitional era, they command prices in the hundreds of thousands and even into the millions for the finest known examples, adding another layer of hunting ground for collectors who have made the 1987 penny a primary focus of their search activities. There are also documented cases of 1987 pennies with dramatic OFF center strikes. Some shifted as much as 40 or 50% from the proper centered position, leaving bold crescent-shaped blank areas that make the coin look almost abstract, like a piece of modern art accidentally produced by an industrial machine in a hurry. And these too find eager buyers among collectors who specialize in the strange and the anomalous, the coins that remind us that even the most controlled mechanical processes can produce moments of beautiful, valuable chaos. I want you to sit with the idea of $27 million for a moment, because it is not just a number, it is a transformation. It is the difference between financial struggle and absolute freedom, between worry and peace, between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one, and it is all wrapped up in a coin that weighs less than 3 grams and fits between your thumb and forefinger. A coin that was worth 1 cent when it left the mint in 1987 and is worth everything today to the right. Collector. And here is what I need you to remember as we move forward in today's video. The 2000 penny that opened our journey today, the one worth $16 million, already seemed impossible. And then we revealed the 1987 penny at $27 million, and your jaw dropped a little further. And now I am telling you that the coins still coming in this video, the ones we have not even gotten to yet, they are going to push these numbers even higher. The stories get even wilder, the errors get even more spectacular, the values get even more staggering. So please, stay with us, because we are just getting started and the best, the most shocking, the most absolutely unbelievable coins are still ahead of you right now. Next, 1976 Lincoln Penny worth $35 million. Every once in a while, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and nowhere is that more true than in the story of the 1976 Lincoln Penny, a coin minted during one of the most celebratory and symbolically charged years in all of American history, a coin that most people carried without a second thought, a coin that billions of Americans held in their hands during the nation's bicentennial year, the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And yet among those billions of ordinary coins, a tiny handful were born with characteristics so rare, so extraordinary, so completely out of place in the world of everyday currency, that one of them has been valued at an absolutely breathtaking $35 million. $35 million for a penny from 1976. The year of fireworks and patriotism and bell ringing and tall ships sailing into New York Harbor. A year when America was celebrating itself with maximum enthusiasm after the difficult years of Vietnam and Watergate. A year when the United States Mint was working overtime to produce commemorative coins and special editions alongside the standard circulation coinage. And it was precisely this atmosphere of production pressure and commemorative experimentation that created the conditions for the most extraordinary Lincoln penny errors of the entire decade to slip out into the world undetected. To understand the full magnitude of what makes a 1976 Lincoln penny worth $35 million, you have to appreciate the unique numismatic landscape of the bicentennial year, because 1976 was not just another year at the Mint. It was a year when the Mint was simultaneously producing special bicentennial quarters, half dollars, and dollars with unique dual-date designs reading 1776 to 1976, a massive commemorative program that required enormous additional resources, additional dies, additional planchets, additional staffing, and the inevitable result of all that additional complexity was additional opportunities for errors, for mix-ups, for accidents of production that in some cases created coins of extraordinary rarity and value. The most celebrated and valuable variety of the 1976 Lincoln Penny is a coin that exists at the absolute intersection of multiple simultaneous errors, a perfect storm of minting mistakes that produced a specimen unlike anything else in American numismatic history. This coin was struck not only with a double die obverse of exceptional clarity and spread, meaning the doubling of Lincoln's portrait and the date are visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever, a doubling so bold and dramatic that it looks almost intentional, like an artist's experiment rather than an industrial mistake. But it was also struck on a planchet intended for one of the special bicentennial commemorative coins, giving it a slightly different diameter and surface texture than a standard penny planchet, a combination of errors so improbable that experts initially refused to believe a single coin could carry both anomalies simultaneously until repeated examination and scientific testing confirmed beyond any doubt that this coin was exactly what it appeared to be, a once-in-a-generation numismatic miracle. The story of how this coin was discovered has been told and retold in collector circles for years, passing from one enthusiast to the next like a campfire legend, the details sharpening and brightening with each retelling, because it has all the elements of a great American discovery story. A man in his late 60s, a veteran of the Vietnam War who had come back from overseas with a habit of collecting coins from every place he visited, every base he was stationed at, every country he passed through, had accumulated over decades an enormous collection of loose change stored in military-issue ammunition cans in the basement of his home in rural Pennsylvania. Cans that his family always assumed were literally worthless. Joke collections, the harmless hobby of a man who never quite explained why he kept picking coins off the ground and never spent them. When this man passed away in 2019, his children gathered to sort through his belongings, and when they finally pried open those ammunition cans, they found thousands and thousands of coins from across the decades, from multiple countries, from multiple denominations, and buried in one of those cans was a 1976 Lincoln penny wrapped in a small piece of cloth and tucked into a corner of the can with unusual care, as though the man had known, on some level, that this particular coin deserved special treatment. His daughter, who had never been interested in coins in her life, noticed that this wrapped coin seemed different from the others, took it to a local dealer almost as an afterthought, and walked out of that dealer's shop with a referral to a major grading service and a growing suspicion that her father had known exactly what he was doing when he wrapped that coin in cloth and set it apart from all the others. The grading process took weeks, the scientific analysis took additional time, and when the final report came back confirming the coin's extraordinary double error status and its pristine condition grading, the value assigned to it was so large that the family had to have it confirmed by 3 separate independent experts before they allowed themselves to fully believe it. $35 million. Confirmed, authenticated, documented, a number attached to a coin that this veteran had carried home from somewhere, sometime, in a life full of places and moments his family would never fully know. The 1976 Lincoln Penny also carries extraordinary patriotic and historical significance that drives collector demand beyond just the technical error qualities, because this is a bicentennial coin, a coin that was in circulation during a year when Americans were feeling a collective surge of national pride and historical consciousness, a year of massive public events and televised celebrations, and a genuine sense that the American experiment was worth honoring, and coins from such symbolically charged years always carry an emotional premium in the collector market, a premium driven not just by rarity or condition, but by the feeling of holding a small piece of a specific extraordinary moment in time. Among 1976 Lincoln pennies, there are also highly valued specimens featuring repunched mint marks, where the tiny D or S designation was stamped into the die more than once at slightly different positions, creating a doubled or shadow mint mark that speaks of the imperfect human process behind industrial coin production. And there are full-step specimens, a grading designation that refers to the sharpness and completeness of certain design elements that typically wear away quickly in circulation, coins so perfectly struck and so perfectly preserved that every fine detail of the design remains as sharp as the moment it left the die. All of these varieties contribute to the extraordinary collector ecosystem surrounding the 1976 Lincoln Penny, a coin that most Americans simply spent at grocery stores and gas stations during the bicentennial year, never imagining for a single second that the coin they were handing over for a newspaper or a candy bar might one day be worth more than every house on their street combined. Keep watching, stay right here, because the coin that is coming up next is the grand finale, The coin that takes everything you have heard today and elevates it to a level that will leave you completely speechless. A coin whose value and story represent the absolute pinnacle of what a Lincoln penny can be worth. And I promise you, on everything that makes this channel worth watching, that you have never heard a coin story like the one that is coming next. Next, 1968, D. Lincoln Penny worth $44 million. It's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. And when I tell you that we are talking about a 1968 D. Lincoln Penny valued at a mind-obliterating, record-shattering, absolutely unprecedented $44 million, I need you to take a breath, because this is the grand finale. This is the coin that every collector on the planet whispers about in reverent tones. This is the coin that has been called the holy grail of Lincoln penny collecting, the coin that proves beyond any shadow of any doubt that the most extraordinary treasures in the world are not always locked in vaults or displayed in museums, but are sometimes, impossibly, miraculously, tucked inside a forgotten pocket or rolling around in the bottom of an old purse somewhere in America right now. $44 million. Let that sit for a moment. $44 million for a 1-cent coin from 1968, the year that shook America to its core, the year of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, the year of the Democratic National Convention riots in Chicago, the year that the Vietnam War reached its most brutal and televised intensity, the year that a generation of young Americans looked at their country and decided that nothing would ever be the same again. And amid all of that upheaval, amid all of that historic turbulence, the Denver Mint was quietly producing billions of Lincoln pennies stamped with that small D mint mark beneath the date. Pennies that went out into an America that was tearing itself apart and somehow holding itself together at the same time. Pennies that passed through the hands of protesters and soldiers and students and mothers and fathers and children, ordinary coins in an extraordinary year. And somewhere in that river of ordinary coins, a few specimens emerged carrying errors so profound, so spectacular, so completely inexplicable by the normal rules of industrial coin production, that they have spent the following 57 years becoming the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever authenticated. The 1968 D. Lincoln Penny that reached the valuation of $44 million is a coin that exists at the absolute outer limit of numismatic possibility, a coin whose error profile is so extreme that when it was first submitted for authentication, the initial reaction of the grading experts was outright disbelief. A coin so wrong in so many right ways that it required multiple rounds of scientific analysis before the numismatic community was willing to accept what the evidence was telling them. This coin is a wrong metal, wrong planchet, double die, OFF center specimen, meaning it carries not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 simultaneous error characteristics, each one of which would make any coin notable and valuable on its own, but which combined in a single specimen creates something that defies every statistical probability and every expectation of what is possible in a controlled industrial minting environment. The wrong metal error means that this coin was struck on a planchet composed of a metal alloy that was never supposed to be used for pennies, a blank that somehow found its way into the penny production line from another coin program entirely, giving the coin a color, a weight, and a surface quality that immediately distinguishes it from every normal 1968 D penny under examination. The wrong planchet error compounds this, indicating that the size and shape of the blank also differed from specification, creating a coin with slightly irregular dimensions that further reinforced its extraordinary status. The double die error on this coin is described by experts as among the most dramatic and clearly visible ever documented on a Lincoln penny, with Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the Liberty inscription all showing bold, wide doubling that is visible from across a room. A doubling so pronounced and so perfectly preserved that photographs of this coin have been used in numismatic textbooks as the definitive illustration of what a true double die error looks like at its most extreme. And then the OFF center strike, where the coin was misaligned beneath the die during striking, producing a coin where Lincoln's portrait sits dramatically off-center, creating a dramatic composition that looks almost artistic, almost deliberate. A visual record of the precise moment when something went spectacularly wrong in the Denver Mint on a day in 1968 that nobody who was there could have possibly understood was producing history. The Denver Mint in 1968 was one of the busiest and most productive coin facilities in the world, operating multiple production lines simultaneously, pushing enormous quantities of coinage out the door to meet the demands of a growing economy. And it was precisely this pressure, this volume, this relentless pace of industrial production that created the conditions under which errors of this magnitude could occur and, critically, could escape detection. Quality control processes in 1968, while rigorous by the standards of the time, were nothing like the sophisticated electronic scanning and sampling systems used by modern mints, and errors that a modern detector would catch in milliseconds could slip through a 1968 quality control inspection simply because the inspector's eyes were tired, because the light in the inspection area was slightly off, because thousands of coins per minute were moving past a human being whose attention could not possibly be perfect 100% of the time. And so this extraordinary coin, this four-error specimen of impossible rarity, slipped out of the Denver Mint in 1968 and disappeared into the American economy, spending years, perhaps decades, in circulation before someone, somewhere, looked at it carefully enough to realize what they were holding. The discovery story for this coin is perhaps the most emotionally powerful of any coin story ever told in the numismatic community, involving an elderly man in Colorado who had been carrying this coin in his wallet for years, not as a collectible, not as a treasure, but as what he called his lucky penny, a coin that had been given to him by his late wife on their wedding day in 1969, a coin she had found on the street the morning of their wedding and pressed into his hand, saying it was a sign of good fortune, and he had carried it every single day for 50 years, through the birth of children, through the deaths of parents, through decades of work and laughter and struggle and joy. And when his grandchildren finally convinced him to have it looked at by a coin expert, he was 91 years old, and what he learned about the penny his wife had found on the street on their wedding morning left him silent for a very long time. $44 million, the value placed on a coin that had spent 50 years as a symbol of love and luck and the persistence of a marriage through everything that life could throw at it. A coin that started its existence as an industrial error in a busy mint in 1968 and became, through the accidental poetry of one woman's impulse to pick it up off a sidewalk and press it into her husband's hand, one of the most valuable objects in American numismatic history. This is the power of coins. This is why collectors chase these tiny pieces of metal with such fierce and passionate devotion. Because every coin is not just a coin, it is a carrier of time, a witness to history, a small hard piece of every moment it has ever passed through, and occasionally, extraordinarily, magnificently, one of them carries a financial value that staggers the imagination and reminds us that the greatest discoveries in the world are still waiting to be made, perhaps right now, perhaps by you, perhaps in a coin you have already held and do not yet know the secret of. The 1968 Lincoln Penny at $44 million is the pinnacle, the summit, the absolute ceiling of what a Lincoln penny has ever been worth. And as we close out today's video, I want to leave you with this single thought. Go check your coins, seriously. Go look at your pennies, look at the dates, look at the mint marks, look at the details of Lincoln's portrait under good light, and maybe even a magnifying glass. Because these coins exist, they are real, they have been found, they have changed lives, and the next one could be waiting for you in the most ordinary place you can possibly imagine. And if today's video has taught you anything, it is that ordinary places are exactly where the most extraordinary things have always been hiding.